Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back to the Gay Buddhist Fellowship. Before we go around and introduce ourselves and then hear from our speaker, I think for the benefit of discussion we may have, our recording, I just want to set the stage. So today, January 12, 2016, in Orlando, Florida, what we have been told is that a lone gunman entered a very popular gay and lesbian bar just after last call and proceeded over 2 hours to kill 50 people, the largest mass shooting in U.S. history, and wound many others. So that's why you see our altar adorned with 50 multicolored candles. So that's what we are. So before we hear from our speaker, our tradition is to go around and introduce ourselves first. My name is Tom.
My name is Douglas.
I'm Jack.
And Brian.
My name is James.
My name is Joe.
Peter.
I'm Jim.
I'm Al.
My name is Walden.
I'm David.
Gary.
Joanne.
Tom. I'm Richard.
I'm Robert.
My name is Greg.
My name is Jay.
Silas. Jason.
Ben.
My name is Ray.
My name is Mark.
Michael.
Larry. Larry.
I'm Shantan.
Jeff.
My name's David.
I'm Clint.
My name is Jerry.
My name is Michael.
I'm Max.
And just by a show of hands, is there anyone joining us for the first time or after a long absence? No? Good. All veterans. So I consider us very fortunate today to have our good friend Tom Moon with us. Tom Moon has been a practitioner of Vipassana meditation for 15 years, and his spiritual home is Spirit Rock Meditation Center. He is a psychologist here in San Francisco, working primarily with gay men. His chief commitment is in exploring the interface between Buddhist practice and psychotherapy. Tom, welcome.
Thank you. Well, I guess what I would like is a little guidance from the group, if I may. I did plan a talk to give today, and then like you all, I woke up to what happened in Orlando. So I'm wondering what's the best way to use our time. I can give the talk, I can do it another time, and we can just have a group discussion of what is happening for us in reaction to all that. So I guess I would just like some feedback from you all about what would be the most productive way to spend our time together today.
I think you should give your talk. And we can have maybe a few minutes at the end to express our feelings.
Thank you. Other?
Yeah.
Same? Any?
Thank you, Tom.
Well, in the opinion of the chair. Okay, right here. Well, the topic my topic du jour, the thing that interests me the most these days, is Samvega and Pasada, two Pali terms which don't have exact translations into English, but they are terms that apply to two kinds of feelings which are held to be essential to the spiritual path. Samvega being essential to getting you on it, and Pasada being what you have to sustain yourself through it. And what I'd like to start with Samvega and start with a few quotes, a couple of quotes, famous ones from Western writers, which exemplify, in my opinion, Samvega. And the first is from Bertrand Russell. It's from an essay he wrote and published in 1912 called The Free Man's Worship. And I first read this, especially this passage, when I was a teenager, and it deeply affected me. And it's one of those things that's been, when you read, there are things you read that just stay with you through the decades. This one has stayed with me, and I've wrestled with it and grappled with it since then. So, and I know a lot of you heard this already. It's a very famous passage. Here it is. That man is the product of causes which had no prevision of the end they were achieving. That his origin, his growth, his hopes and his fears, his loves and his beliefs are but the outcome of accidental collocations of atoms. That no fire, no heroism, no intensity of thought and feeling can preserve an individual life beyond the grave. That all the labors of the ages, all the devotion, all the inspiration, all the noonday brightness of human genius are destined to extinction in the vast depth of the solar system, and that the whole temple of man's achievements must inevitably be buried beneath the debris of a universe in ruins. All these things, if not quite beyond dispute, are yet so nearly certain that no philosophy which rejects them can hope to stand. Only within the scaffolding of these truths, only on the firm foundation of unyielding despair, can the soul's habitation henceforth be safely built. Right? I wanted to start on an up note. So, I'm 15 years old in the Belmont Public Library, and I'm reading this, and I'm thinking, whoa, this is so cool, I mean, destruction and despair and meaning. What more could a kid ask for? And I'm reading it, I'm reading it in the Belmont Public Library because this essay is in a book called Why I Am Not a Christian. And if I had taken that book home and my mother had seen it, she would have had one of her spells. So in order to keep her alive, I just read it every day at the library. And it was all the more exciting because I knew the secret truth that adults were too fearful and hypocritical not to face, the utter emptiness and meaningless of existence. So, but even for a teenager, ultimately the bliss of unyielding despair starts to wear off. And I was faced with the reality that, this kind of sucks. And then that's where it stood for a while. And then later when I was in college and I was studying psychology, I came to the realization that what Russell was asking for in this essay, with the task he gives us, is manifestly, self-evidently impossible. Because despair, at least as I've experienced it, is not a firm foundation for anything. It's an abyss. It's something you fall into, and I can't have a philosophy of life which is built on a foundation of despair. People try to do that, I think the existentialists tried to do that but that was more, it looks to me like that was more of a post-war mood than a philosophy which people can live by, anyway. So, and then later, when I began to encounter the Buddha Dharma and looked at this, I suddenly realized that what Russell is dealing with in this passage, of course, is the truth of impermanence, right? He's realizing everything goes, impermanent are all compounded things. And his response is unyielding despair. So writing this essay, in my opinion, is his Samvega moment. In the archetypal story of the Buddha, his Samvega moment, as you all know, I'm sure, occurs when he leaves, at age 29, he leaves the palace that he's grown up in and goes outside to see what's out there. And he encounters the four heavenly messengers, they're called, right? The first three are a sick person, an old person, and a corpse. And he goes, and he asks his attendant a really incredibly naive question for someone 29 years old to be asking, I think. He says, is this going to happen to me? And the attendant says, I'm afraid so, this is how it is. And he's just absolutely horrified. I guess this is meant to show how protected he had been. And he's got to do something about this. And so that's the beginning of his spiritual life. That's his Samvega moment. What is Samvega? So Thanissaro Bhikkhu describes it in this way. He says, it's a hard word to translate because it covers such a complex range, at least three clusters of feelings at once. The oppressive sense of shock, dismay, and alienation that come with realizing the futility and meaninglessness of life as it's normally lived. A chastening sense of our own complacency and foolishness in having let ourselves live so blindly, and an anxious sense of urgency in trying to find a way out of the cycle. Right? So that's Samvega. And again, this is an archetypal story. So their idea in Buddhism is that this is what you have to this is what you have to see, is this impermanence, the thing that there's no secure refuge in this world. There's nothing to hang on to. It's all sand, between your fingers. We can't hold on to anything as a secure refuge. That realization starts the process going of spiritual life. And I'll read another quote. This is also very popular with adolescents. You've all heard this too. It's Thoreau from the first chapter of Walden. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. What is called resignation is confirmed desperation. From the desperate city, you go into the desperate country and have to console yourself with the bravery of minks and muskrats. A stereotyped but unconscious despair is concealed even under what are called the games and amusements of mankind. So, I don't know, is this true? I mean, his idea is that, we live, the great mass of humanity lives in a kind of quiet desperation which we try to conceal from ourselves and push away with our diversions and amusements. Is that how life is? Is that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. So, in the opinion of the chair, I don't know. That was sounded kind of 50-50 to me. Right? It's an interesting perspective, kind of a grim one, But I think it kind of resonates with the Buddhist perspective that we try to deny the truth of impermanence. Again, Thanissaro Bhikkhu. As the early Buddhist teachings freely admit, the predicament is that the cycle of birth, aging, and death is meaningless. They don't try to deny this fact, and so don't ask us to be dishonest with ourselves or to close our eyes to reality. As one teacher has put it, the Buddhist recognition of the reality of suffering, so important that suffering is honored as the first noble truth, is a gift in that it confirms our most sensitive and direct experience of things, an experience that many other traditions tried to deny. So, what do you think? I heard two points of view out there. What is Thoreau? What do you think? Anyone want to say anything about? You don't have to, but sir.
Well, I feel that it's simultaneous.
Uh-huh.
There's great despair and there's great joy coexisting in this moment.
Uh-huh.
And it's expressed in our society in so many different ways.
Yeah.
That contradict each other and support each other. I don't know. I guess I'm feeling very holistic this
Yeah, it's a little, we're on that side, most of us do. Sir?
Well, I mean, I think that if our equanimity is dependent on outside circumstances, good events, bad events, then we will experience unhappiness. But if our equanimity, our state of mind can be, if we can be equanimous regardless of what is happening externally, then perhaps it's not all despair.
There's also something about this notion that we're all going to go to dust, and everything goes to dust. And at the same time, everything humans could ever create is already contained within the universe. So there's something about, it's just our this manifestation of it, but that it's already there.
There's something eternal that we manifest. Yeah, timeless. Yeah. Yes? Hey, James?
Okay, I think it's hard to encounter love on a regular basis and a sense of presence in our meditation and come out with a feeling of nihilism. I just think what we encounter in our inner life is so powerful and so non-egoic that we're clearly part of something so enormous that we can't really speak of it definitively. I think awe is as common as suffering.
Yeah. Okay, can I go on? Wait, one more.
Yeah, for me, the quiet desperation that I've heard people like Joe Macy refer to it as silent screaming. And there's many references to it, but for me, it's what made me look for more.
Yeah, so that was your Samvega experience. Yes. Yeah, the silent scream. Okay. Well, one comment. The Buddha said that the realm of existence is perfect for to become enlightened, because he said we're in the middle here. There's suffering, and there's also pleasure and joy, and we're kind of halfway. So in the God realms, they're too blissful to care. In the hell realms, they're suffering too much to be able to do any practice. But here, it's perfect. Anyway, so I said there were 4 messengers. So the 4th heavenly messenger that the Buddha comes across is a renunciate sitting in silent, blissful meditation. And I think this symbolizes the idea that there is a way out of that it isn't nihilism, that's not the final word about existence, and that there is a path that leads out of suffering. So that gives us the second word, pasada, which is somewhere defined in here. It's a complex set of feelings usually translated as clarity and serene confidence. And it's the idea that by working a path, we can come to some relationship to the suffering in life in which we are not in, unyielding despair. So that the final word is not unyielding despair, but serene confidence. That's the foundation. It's kind of when Bertrand Russell was walking around Cambridge, I don't think they had renunciants sitting in the grass, right? So he didn't have this idea. They didn't have this idea. Things have changed in London since then, I think. There's a yoga studio every 100 feet now. But so anyway, so that's the idea, is that there is a path that leads out of suffering, and that we can follow it. But the interesting thing is that the first noble truth is suffering. That it is not denial of it; it is going right into the center of it. It is facing it. That is the way out of it. It's the way out is through it. Who is this? This is Jack Kornfield. Opening ourselves to all aspects of experience is necessary if we want to make a difference. To look at the world honestly, unflinchingly, and directly requires us to also look at ourselves. We discover the sorrow and pain are not just out there, external, but also are within ourselves. We have our own fear, prejudice, hatred, desire, neurosis, and anxiety. It is our own sorrow. In opening to suffering, we discover the great heart of compassion. Let's see, where are we? I'm almost out of stuff. So the idea is then that there is a path that leads out of suffering, and that it isn't the final word about existence. And when I see people, I don't think I've ever met anyone personally who is enlightened, but I've met a lot of high beings in my life, a lot of people who've done a lot of practice. And I do see a serene confidence and a joy in them, and also an ability to face the suffering of the world without despair. There's a really interesting story about the Buddha that a lot of people don't know. Everyone knows, he was raised to be a king, right? He was going to inherit this kingdom. And then he ran away from home and became enlightened instead. But what a lot of people haven't heard is that later in his life, this kingdom that he was supposed to inherit was overrun by invaders and destroyed. And the noble men and noble women of the kingdom were herded into pits by the invaders and trampled to death by elephants. So it was not a more barbarous time than ours, right? So the news of this was brought to the Buddha, and of course his whole life was public. He's sitting with a crowd of people around him. I guess he's under a tree talking, and somebody comes and gives him this information, right? And it is said that he received the information in silence and never spoke, which has always intrigued me. What does a person of that level of development feel when he hears something like that? Does he not suffer? Does he suffer? What? I mean, I suppose he does not succumb to unyielding despair, but wow, it's just an interesting question to think about. The same thing happened in our century, or maybe the 20th, but anyway, to the Dalai Lama, right? When he was talking and word came to him that the Chinese had murdered one of a favorite teacher of his, a famous monk, And what he did was burst into tears and cried, and told everyone why he was crying. And then he said, now we must pray for the Chinese. It makes me want to cry. Now we must pray for the Chinese. It's a beautiful that what came to him was first the grief and then the compassion. That's quite beautiful, I think. Sorry, I'm getting a little. So I'm going to stop and let's have a conversation. But I want to read one more thing. Relative to something you said a few minutes ago. Some of the Buddhists that I've seen who've really done the practices, really gone through and really taken it seriously, do reach, many of them, a state of bliss, of ecstasy in this world. And not just in the Buddhist path. I think of Ramakrishna. The man was just lived in ecstasy, or Ramana Maharshi, another Hindu saint who's just, age 16 he gets enlightened, and he just lives in a state of enlightenment for the rest of his life. And here are some words from Tong Samchol, one of the great Zen masters in the last century. He was called the Living Buddha of Korea, and he lived in a kind of ecstasy all the time too. And this is what he said. Look at the great light. As the brilliant sun rises in the blue sky, endless, eternal light pervades the entire universe. Heaven and hell, the noble and the evil, all come from this great light. And there is nothing in the universe which is not this great light. The flying birds, the crawling bugs, the flowing streams, the stoic boulders always speak loudly of this light. And they all reflect the oneness of everything. That is both a noble and an awesome sight. Even that which seems hopelessly pitiful to us is filled with this light, and everything that exists is genuinely happy. I don't know, is he deluded or enlightened? A little each? I don't know. But I'm really glad there are people like this in the world. I want to stop there and maybe, because I think we should talk. I think I'm very full of feeling today, and I think other people are too. So those are my thoughts. That's my whole act. What do you guys do?
I've heard that the gate to the spiritual path is flanked by two columns. One is confusion, and the other is paradox. And that seems kind of apt.
Yes. Well, the confusion part sounds like a little bit like Samvega to me. What do I do about this? And the paradox, what do you mean by that? Do you mean the eternal and the relative truth, or
Well, I've had the experience in grief of an immense satisfaction, and I don't know how to describe it, and that's paradox.
Yes. Yes. I've had that feeling too, even in the midst of just almost unbearable grief, the sense of a deep peace and even a satisfaction and a love, Yeah. Yeah, I've had that too. I wonder if that's what the Buddha felt when he got that news. Sir?
I was talking before we started today with my friends here, and it brought up the issue of what Trevor Ricochet calls the genuine heart of sadness. And it seems to be thematic for me what you're saying, Samvega, and then the other side, the paradox, that in the middle of grief there can be contentment, or not about the fact that you can be loved, or that our heart can be broken.
Yeah, I heard a phrase once that sometimes when the heart breaks, it breaks open, and that is the potential gift of suffering. It can also harden and close, but that it can also break open. That's what I think, the Dalai Lama exemplified in that story about crying, and praying for the Chinese.
I found that following this path and doing this practice has given more spaciousness to my experience of life, and in that way I have experienced sorrow and also joy at the same time.
In the same moment.
In the same moment. I have my sister I think she's dying. She's not quite there yet. But I'm trying to support her in her suffering. And at the same time, I have a grandson who's 9 months old, and he's nothing but joy. And in the same day, I go from visiting my sister to visiting my grandson, and it's all there in the same experience. And in that regard, I think that's what happens when the heart breaks and opens. It just becomes so spacious. Yeah.
So it sounds to me like what I'm hearing and what you're saying too is that you've learned Pasada from your own experience, a confidence that it worked, the practices work, that they do.
There's a reinforcement.
It's not just blind faith. It's there. We see
tangible results.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
When I was 12 years old, I discovered that I was gay one day as I was reading a psychology book.
Yeah.
And I was totally heartbroken. To me, that was the first realization that the neat little world that I grew up in as a Mormon boy in Salt Lake City was not going to work out for me.
Yeah.
And my heart was broken. I started crying. I was hysterically crying for 3 days. And I looked forward to my future and to my struggles, and I realized that I would have a difficult time in my life. And that has proven to be the case. Up until this very morning, I realized that my life is about struggling to maintain my truth of what I see for myself in the world. And it hasn't disappointed me, and it was really truly a vision that I had for my life, and it was very accurate.
Do you do meditative practice or the path or?
In my own way, yeah.
Yeah. Does it help?
I recognize that my life is a constant balance of battling complacency and struggling for truth. Yeah, I mean it's definitely, and I have a lot of joy in my life.
Oh, good.
But there has been a lot of heartache also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine too.
And it's just been the truth of my journey through my life.
Well, you told her, let me tell mine. I was 14 and in Canoga Park walking to an English class on a hot day and looking at 3 guys walking in front of me and looking at their butts. Thinking, whoa. Wow. And then I thought, uh-oh. And, it was like in an instant. For me, it was sudden too. It was like, and I couldn't cry because there was no safe place to cry. And I went and looked at myself in the mirror and I said, you're one of them. It was just complete, so then I went to the library to look myself up in the psychiatric textbooks at the time. Big mistake, the Dewey, the catalog, remember those? Yeah. Homosexuality. See also perversion, psychopathic deviance. So that didn't much help, That's why I became a psychotherapist. I thought my only hope was to become an expert in mental health. It didn't work. But anyway, but for me, there was a moment. Have you had this? There's a moment when I was the first time I really let myself love a man, and I was making love, and we were looking in each other's eyes, and there was this sudden sense of being rooted in the nature of things. This sort of sense of, and I wrote this, my own rhapsodic thing about it. I said in my journal, I was 24, I think. The Sufis say that whenever a soul finds its way home, that a chorus of angels sings a song in the heavens. Oh my God, it's true. I hear them. I was just over the top, But the sense of being loved really has it doesn't mean the internalized homophobia stuff. That was real, and it has been rough. But that balance of the feeling that whenever you really love and are loved, that on some sense that this is what life is for. Even if it comes through a form that you're not supposed to have. So it's been mixed. It's been that to me too. There's also been the moments of awakening and coming home in this. You know what I'm talking Sir Oswald?
Somebody mentioned earlier the word all, and it seems to me a good antidote to despair. And I have personally experienced in my darkest times in the middle of being overwhelmed by the sadness of like losing a partner or things like that, some switch happens at some point, which is my road to sanity, which is like, wow, I am here to witness all of this and to have witnessed any number of other things. And in connection to those 50 souls that were lost today, here we are 3,000 miles away thinking of them right now with 50 candles, and how many people around the world are feeling the same thing. Yeah. And it's awesome to realize that there's goodness in the world too.
Yes, yes. Yeah, you're here to witness. This is where I don't go with Thanissaro Bhikkhu. I quoted this, that he said the ordinary round of existence is completely meaningless. So he's a monk, right? He runs the forest monastery down in San Diego. But that doesn't quite speak to me either. I mean, there's a sense that it matters in ways that I can't explain. But just like what you said, I'm here. I'm intended to do something. I don't know who intended it or what, but there is an intentionality in this life that I can't explain or understand, but can't deny either. You know what I mean? And that it matters that we love.
And it's a motivator for action, in practical action, which is often what's needed to address the moment.
Yeah.
And that's giving me comfort.
Yeah. Well, this is helpful for me in a way because, I mean, I don't know how it is for you guys, but these times seem real grim to me sometimes, this political thing. And I mean, Donald Trump, I mean, can you believe it? It's just absolutely beyond imagining, you know. And so to feel that it matters, that we're going somewhere, and that like you said, that there is a lot of cruelty and ignorance and delusion in the world, but there is this spirit of compassion too, which is quieter often. It's not as dramatic as a mass murder, but it's there.
You linked impermanence to the quiet desperation.
Yes.
And I'm wondering about the not self piece and its relationship, because it seems to me that, you know, we glorify, in this culture, we glorify selfhood, and a lot of suffering comes from the burden of having to be a self.
Yes.
So, you know, so there's the personal realm of emotional experience, and then there's the transpersonal realm of feeling more connected to something beyond yourself, and that's its own refuge in a way.
Yes, quite beautiful. Well, that's what when I read this essay by Bertrand Russell, I'd never heard of not self, anatta, or any of that stuff. And I guess he never did either, because for him, the idea that we as individuals will not continue to exist eternally, or the human race won't, that's despair. That's the only answer to it. But in a certain sense, we don't exist now. You know, that to some degree, this individuality we speak of is very relative, right? And this connection that we have is what is more real, right? I think that's what all the great realized beings have said. That this self that we spend so much time trying to aggrandize and protect is a fiction. So it's the impermanence in that sense is good news. Is that what? Mm-hmm. Oh, I want to read. There's another. I forgot a part of my talk. When you're on the path, what do you think of this? What I have found is that once I had my Samvega experience and life, I began to say, I got to do something about this, and I got to find a way to respond to suffering so it doesn't drive me crazy. Then you're on the path, and it's as if you live in two worlds simultaneously. Do you ever have this experience that we're like spiritual amphibians, that we have? Listen to what the Buddha said. I forgot this part when I was talking. He said, well, first of all things are impermanent. They arise and they pass away. To be in harmony with this truth brings great happiness. The exact opposite of what Bertrand Russell said. To be in harmony with the truth of impermanence brings great happiness. And in the Dhammapada, impermanent are all compounded things. No, not that one. Let go of the past, let go of the future, let go of the present, and cross over to the farther shore of existence with mind wholly liberated. So the farther shore of existence is a metaphor, right? But it's like there's a distant land that we're trying to get to and that we belong to, but we're here too, right? That's that sense of being, having one foot in the ordinary world and one foot out is a common experience that I have. I wanted to read it. C.S. Lewis, from his Christian perspective, and his Western perspective, talked about this. He said, humans are amphibians, half spirit and half animal. As spirits, they belong to the eternal world, but as animals, they inhabit time. This means that while their spirit can be directed to an eternal object, their bodies, passions, and imaginations are in continual change, for to be in time means to change. Their nearest approach to constancy, therefore, is undulation, the repeated return to a level from which they repeatedly fall back, a series of troughs and peaks. My spiritual life is exactly like that, even though I'm not a Christian. It's a process of remembering and forgetting, waking up and going back to sleep, getting lost and getting found. And I like to believe it's not this, it's a spiral. I'm moving in some direction to which I don't understand, but which I seem to be drawn toward. And that's part of the process. So despair is part of the process. I fall into despair sometimes and then into hope and joy. I don't know whether that speaks to other people. We got 6 more minutes and then we have to stop.
I have a question.
Sir. Thank you for... I wasn't looking over it.
So with all that, I wonder where the Dharma comes in. This probably demands another talk from you, but is there a tremendous amount of work when you talk about these enlightened beings that you've met who are on a higher plane? Have they really had to work the path?
Well, yeah. All except Ramana Maharshi. Well, Ramana Maharshi did too. Well, yeah, but this is the Dharma. I thought we were talking about the Dharma. Yeah, I skipped over. There's the Eightfold Path, right? It involves mindfulness practice, development of compassion, and then the various right thing, right speech, right livelihood, right understanding, right? Fellowship with the wise, Sangha, right?
And that takes a little bit of time, though, right? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, like a few thousand lifetimes. Usually it's considered a few thousand lifetimes. Okay, if you don't believe that, still many decades. Yeah, right.
I'm just wondering, it seems like a lot of people get stuck at the cruelty and the nihilism after, understanding the first cause of suffering, looking at that. But so I just think, work in the Dharma it's critical.
Well, I think that was my point about Russell, was that I think that in his culture there was no answer to the despair. And unyielding despair is the firm foundation of our, has to be, that's what he came to. And so I read that at 15, and then kind of the rest of my life was how to answer that, because that won't work for me, And the Buddhist answer is Pasada, a serene confidence that based on your experience, not on what someone tells you, that by doing these practices, as you were mentioning, they work, that you begin to have a heart that can respond to horrors like what happened, this morning, without succumbing to despair, that becomes possible. It becomes possible to live in this world without running from the horrors, but without being overwhelmed by them either.
I have a question, I guess, about if there's a way to contain what happened this morning, and it seems there may be some actual social change that comes from this. This might be the trigger that allows some form of control, who knows. But that we as gays and lesbians are called upon again and again to be unwilling martyrs in social change, and how to hold that without feeling like a victim. or
Yeah.
scared?
Yeah.
I don't know yet.
Don't ask me. I mean, I'm scared, you know. I mean, and angry, and I don't want to be a martyr. None of those people did. They were out drinking and dancing and cruising and doing what I've done millions of times, you know. And I'd love to believe that action will come out of this about gun control. But if Sandy Hook didn't do it, you know, what will move these people? You know, when does the general revulsion finally arrive and we say enough? You know, I don't know.
Well, the murder of school children doesn't do it. Then
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, I mean, what could, you know? I don't understand those people, the people who, but I know what they'll do in Congress: the moments of silence and prayer, and let's not politicize this by actually doing, you know, suggesting we do anything about it.
No, well, they'll say, well, if everybody in there had guns, they could have.
Yeah, more guns. That's the answer. Right. That's what the NRA will say. Yeah. If one guy had a gun.
Just to finish my little thought that I started earlier. Last night I was out to dinner with some friends, and these are very old friends of mine for many years, 40 years. And he was talking about the inevitability of a Trump presidency.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, look, we're not talking about this tonight.
Yeah.
And this morning when I woke up, and on Facebook, all this stuff, I have to tell you, I signed up for Hillary Clinton's donation, $100 a month. There is something I can do about this.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And I'm on board for $100 a month for Hillary Clinton till the end of their campaign.
Good for you. Great.
And you know what? It made me feel good.
Yeah. But you don't feel so helpless, right?
No, I'm like on board with this struggle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't believe it's going to happen, but I can't deny that it's possible. I mean, I think that the odds are very much against it. But I got a call. This will be last. I wrote a column. I write this column for the Bay Times, and I wrote a column on generosity, and I gave as an example of an ungenerous spirit Donald Trump. I thought that would be a fairly uncontroversial thing, and I got a call from a woman. Old grandmother. I'd love your column on generosity, but I'd like to talk to you about something. So I'd written, and she said, it was a beautiful column, it was wonderful, it moved me, inspired me, but Donald Trump as ungenerous? She said, I don't think so at all. He's a wonderful man. He's going to turn this country around. And because I don't personally know anybody, personally in my life, anyone who thinks that. I know there are millions who do. I don't know any of them. I'm so protected in this the People's Republic of San Francisco. And I said to her, well, as far as I'm concerned, he's a fascist and he's a narcissistic, crazy man. And she said, oh, she'd never heard that. She said, I guess we're going to have to disagree to disagree. I said, yes. I said, this is just not a conversation I'm capable of having right now. I said, I'm sorry, goodbye. So,
what is your professional diagnostic?
Of what? Of her? Of Trump?
Yeah.
Well, I think.
Besides just.
Well, there's a psychologist in Harvard who uses him in his classes as a textbook case of the narcissistic personality disorder. I think that's it. But sometimes I think he's a psychopath. They have a lot in common. They're kind of hard to distinguish. But I think the narcissism is the character. It's life starring me. The whole world revolves around me. Fair and just is whatever I want, right? I mean, that's his whole deal, right? And greed, because narcissists feel empty, so they typically are greed types, you know, filling my emptiness with adulation, money, et cetera, is the purpose of life. Doesn't that sound? I mean, I think that's it.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's. Oh, and then we got to stop because we got to do announcements.
No, we can do announcements.
Okay. Did I miss you?
I just wanted to suggest that there seems to me the underlying principle, force of existence is for human beings is a total upwelling of joy to simply be.
Yes.
That we're here.
Yes.
And it's wonderful.
Yes.
And all the despair and sadness and everything else that we feel in the process of being here, we're still here, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
One comment on that, and then we'll stop. I love Hinduism as much as Buddhism personally, and in Hindu philosophy, the Brahma, the ultimate reality, has three characteristics: Satchit Ananda, right? Being, bees, consciousness, and Ananda is bliss. That the fundamental reality, when all is said and done, is joy, and that we are all made from joy. That's the standard theological view in that religion. In fact, all of them, if you look at all the theistic religions, that the fundamental reality is joy. And I think personally that there's something to that. That was why I read this thing from the Korean monk. Well, on that note, I feel much better than when I walked in, so I want to thank you for making me feel happier. So,
thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Next week, our speaker will be Pamela Weiss. She was practicing the Zen and Theravada traditions of Buddhism for over 25 years, including several years of Zen monastic training. She completed teacher training with Jack Kornfield through Spirit Rock, leads a Wednesday evening sitting group at San Francisco Insight, and teaches classes, workshops, and retreats internationally, and she's busy. Pamela is also an executive coach and the founder of Appropriate Response, a company dedicated to bringing the principles and practices of Buddhism into the workplace. So, as for announcements, our Sangha is sustained by your generosity and giving. And so our host will, there is a bowl out there, a Dana bowl, and our host will come around with it. Suggested donation is $8 to $10, which helps us rent this beautiful hall and pay for all these candles and everything we do, including the newsletters. Our host today, there he is, David.
I'm the host today, and if you want to have tea and enjoy the camaraderie of each other and talk from our hearts this morning, that you're invited to do that. And if you have tea, you can put your cups in the sink and I'll take care of those. There are treats out there, and if you have any questions about what's there, you can ask me about it. There's a sign-up sheet if you want to sign up. And you can join with some of us for lunch at the door at 12:30 and go to lunch. And there's the dongle, which I guess I'll be carrying around, and open up our hearts and contribute to a cause that is going to make your heart feel full of joy, possibly, and you'll walk away here feeling better.
Sold. Other announcements. There are some books out here, Clear Dharma, Volumes 1 and 2, if everybody may have one by now. They're out there. They're free for the taking. Okay. Let's gather in a circle for our dedication of miracle.
By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity, without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives. Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.